All right, let's talk about keeping a mix from getting all cluttered up with reverb. And it's really, really tempting. We always seem to do this, and I think it's the nature of our style of personality that does this kind of thing, where you want everything big and you want to, or maybe even good is a better word. You want that awesome kick drum, you want an awesome vocal sound, you want an awesome hi hat, blah blah blah. Well, no one really says they want an awesome hi hat, but you know what I'm talking about. And so I know me, for example, really, really like to I've spent hours and hours and hours and a lot of money chasing this whole reverb thing. And when I'm in reverb mode, I don't listen to stuff I normally listen to. I don't put on whatever. It doesn't even matter. Um, my tastes are so varied, but I don't ever seem to when I'm thinking reverb think of those that kind of music. I start thinking of Enya or something, like where they actually recorded in a castle or something, and I hear that and I go, man, listen to that reverb. And of course, I only do that because I'm a recording engineer guy. I wouldn't do that any other time. But so what happens is I start when I might force that kind of thinking. A Enya track might have I don't know, some instrument I never even heard of in a castle, and her going and that's it. And that's something, a concept I want to kind of illustrate here, and I'm going to do it in a real dumb way where you'll hear it and go, "Well, I knew that," but everybody knows it, but everybody seems to break this rule. So anyway, I hate to call it a rule, but let's check out what I got. This is my X Files music I was working on that I've whatever. Okay, and then that, I think I've shown you this in a previous video, but just in case any of you haven't seen that video, if I kill the reverb on this, here's what we got. Okay, so the reverb made that track, and I really, really like it the way that is, again, in that X-Files kind of way, which I refuse to apologize anymore for. But it's a really cool sound, but I can't get away with too many more elements on top of that because that reverb is so. I guess reverb is so, I don't know, sensitive, easily covered up. I don't know. Call it what you want. At least in this particular setting. Um, so let's see what happens when we go to the next chunk where I added a track on top of this, and I'm kind of pushing my limits in regard to amount of stuff going on. And some of that's intentional. I can't seem to get away from that habit. But this is my music, and I don't really. No one's gonna listen to it, but you poor victim. So anyway, let's see what happens. Let me back up a bar or two here. Let's see. Yeah, let me put the damn reverb on. Now that's another issue I guess we could get into sometime. Is if when I think of a reverb that can define a track, defines a generation, I imagine it. I think of it of price, and I don't know if this reverb sounds expensive or not, but it certainly fits, does what I want it to do, and I really like it. And this is the reverb in Zebra 2, which you can also get in their Zebrafy plugin, which I think comes with Zebra 2. But I've spent a lot of cash on. I've got Lexicon PCM90 here in my rack, and even tides, and I've got all the UADs, fancy reverbs, and all most of them. Anyway, I've spent a lot of money on reverbs, and ultimately, I still haven't figured out what a good reverb even is, or what it means, or what it does. But that's another discussion. I'll organize better. But so I hope you got something out of that. But here we go. Okay, now I've carefully orchestrated that, believe it or not. That's just some idiotic crap, and that's just what I do. Let's just mix stuff that aren't supposed to mix. In 5th grade, we thought we could build a bomb that way. Anyway, that was before terrorism was a problem. Now, if you take a look, when this thing goes, wow, 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 right after that, wow, and there's a break in the that sound, and that leaves the reverb from this other sound here, from our X-Files sound, to kind of ring over. So we can get away with this just barely. We may not be able to do that sort of thing like with big electric guitars or anything that would just chew up a ton of space. So I was pretty careful. I debated if I wanted to leave that reverb on, because what we'd find is as the track gets denser and denser, we need less and less of that reverb. Or another way of looking at it is the reverb goes from being a really cool thing to just kind of being junk, like that takes up space in your closet that maybe could be better used for something else. Some bowling ball you haven't used in 15 years or something, and yard sale type stuff. Suzanne Summers, both. What was that little leg? Thigh Master, yeah. Okay, now, and here, we get to this. I'm going to call it a pre-chorus. I don't know. I wasn't really thinking when I made this on purpose. Real dumbed down. Just throw it together. Who cares? And this next part, I got kind of a big old bright pad, and I'm still kind of doing an X-File style thing, but you can tell it doesn't work near as well. So listen to the reverb on like ding, 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 or whatever the melody is. I already forgot it. And see, now you can, hang on. So you can see that the reverb is definitely hanging over. I got a ton of it on there. Now let me mute my big old pad there. And on my headphones, I'm barely hearing my X-File sound, but on my monitors it was fine, so whatever that means. In fact, hang on. I see a pattern here. Even my little wow, well, I can't even do wow. On the, I guess it's a snare 2-beat or doing 4. I don't know where I put that. That alone is enough to kind of dominate the reverb, which is kind of a strange effect, but it just kind of shows you how your mileage can vary from when done properly. Of course, all I have is a drum beat going and a few little very sparse little, whatever it was in this first chunk. And we already heard what I played on the keyboard. So it's almost a joke how sparse that is. I probably wouldn't, well, most people wouldn't release that as is without the reverb on it. And that's all we've got. And so, yeah, the reverb's the star there. But then when we get over to here, it's just kind of, it barely makes sense with nothing but the drums and a new snare sound type thing. And the other factor is it's competing with itself, much like I'm competing with this reverb tail right now. If you could look at the notes, they go, and then they repeat right back over. So when the tail of this dude is still ringing out, then we got this guy. So let's just listen to that real quick. I'll solo it. And all that, this is a hard tutorial to get through. I want to go right through it. When we're doing the original one, it made hit a couple notes, and the sustain of those notes, that modulated reverb, which is something I covered in another video, was its own instrument. It did something really cool and added a real aura, and it turned it from being a joke to being X-Files music, which might still be a joke. I don't know, but it made it cool to me. Now, when we get to this, there is no room. That modulation is still happening, and we can hear it if we just play the first 3 notes and hit stop. Let's do that. Now, that's interesting. That's aliens or conspiracies or something. So I guess this is really more about arrangement, but we don't always have control over arrangement in mixing, or rarely do we. But we almost always have control over reverb levels. And so in this particular point, I'm not sure if I gain anything by having this giant reverb on here. Now, I don't know if I have to take it off, but let's just take it off. I bet it gets cool. Here, I'm going to do it in time. Let's see. No soloing, pushing buttons, ignore me. Okay, don't ignore me now. Okay, well, that sucks too. But, oh yeah, I forgot the pad. Okay, and that's a good clue too. Okay, it got boring, but let's see if that gives a bunch of space to our big old loud pad here. Okay, so what happened there is that reverb was everything to that original track because it was basically naked. And now going to the pre-chorus on the same song, same tempo, same idiot making it, all the reverb isn't as critical. And I want to hear that in context, backing up with all of it. Let's just start right there and turn it back on. Okay. Okay, so what we found was that reverb went from being the most valuable thing on earth to really the most stupid thing on earth, and we're better off with almost zero reverb. This big modulated thing that takes 10 seconds to get decay is definitely inappropriate when the pad's going. And so I guess the big point here is one is to always custom tailor your reverbs to what you're doing. Um, and in this particular case, it's very exaggerated. I want to make that clear. You're not going to use these types of reverbs too often. In like I would say 99.999% of the projects I've done, this just wouldn't work. Any rock, metal, pop, country type stuff, you're not going to get away with it. Only reason I'm getting away with it is because I custom designed it in the sound. I think like a close example to that would be like U2's The Edge. When he does his delay thing, which that he's blended that into his style, into his riffs, into the whole thing, and that suddenly makes sense in the song. But you couldn't just add that delay to some random, I don't know, Metallica riff or Beck or whoever, and that actually makes sense most of the time. It was premeditated and very dependent on what the fingers are doing, much as you could see here, oops, there on my X-Files MIDI track, and there where it gets much busier and makes less sense. So when you're doing your rock and your metal or whatever it is you're up to, be very aware of the size of your reverbs and not the size as in space, but the RT60, the decay times. This stuff can get real tricky in a hurry, and the busier your songs are, the less it's necessary, or the quantity of reverb, I'm saying. Or you have to be careful how you do it, and that's something we're going to cover in later videos. But I think the first thing I wanted to draw attention to was the notion of just slapping good reverb on something. That doesn't really work that way, because what does good mean? And the more you do this, the more you find examples where where a super short delay reverb is awesome, and then other times a really long reverb would be awesome. So it really is reacting to what the tracks give you so often. Okay, I don't know if you got anything out of that, but rant over. Thanks, guys. Bye.